Pope Leo is not really buying Israel's excuse because he put out he got some heat because he put out a statement that initially didn't name the IDF as the perpetrator of the attack, but then on Sunday in one of his after one of his prayers, he called it an Israeli army attack, and very strongly called for a ceasefire. So people are not buying this excuse that it was an accident.
We're going to bring in our first guest, which is Dave DeCamp. So Dave is a news editor and a columnist for antiwar.com, where he has worked since 2018. He also hosts a daily podcast, Anti-War News with Dave DeCamp, which provides analysis on U.S. foreign policy from a non-interventionist perspective. And he's one of my favorite people to talk to on a host of issues. So Dave, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Hey, Misty, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, of course. Yeah, no. I initially wanted to have you come on to talk about Somalia, but then as I follow your feed very closely, there's been some pretty significant happenings in Gaza. So I wanted to have you on to talk about both of those things. So we're going to start with Gaza, if you don't mind, which, by the way, everybody, this is Dave's Twitter page. If you want to go follow him, it's at DeCamp Dave. Highly recommend you follow Dave. And he recently wrote some articles on the issue we're going to be discussing today, like the one mentioned here. So there's been, it seems like an increasing level of attacks on Christians. And then obviously I think it's the only Catholic church in Gaza. So tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah, so there's been two big incidents when it comes to attacks on Christians, on Palestinian Christians. The article that you have up there is about the attack on Taibeh, which is a Palestinian village in the West Bank. It's the last village in the West Bank where the entire population is Christian. And they've been under attacks from Jewish settlers for a long time now. And their goal is essentially to terrorize people to make them leave the village because they want to steal their land. And they've made that very clear. They recently erected a billboard near the town that said, "You have no future here." So that really shows what their goal is. But something that they did recently that was just incredibly brazen was they set a fire right next to St. George's Church, which is an ancient church built in the 5th century. And then the priests in that town basically called for help, put out a statement issuing a plea for help for delegations to come to the town because the settler violence was getting so out of hand. And they had a visit from church leaders in the region. And even Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, who's a staunch Israel supporter and staunch Zionist, even he made the trip and condemned the attack as a terror attack. He didn't mention the perpetrators by name, but it was pretty strong. And right after this, Israel bombs as you said, the only Catholic church in Gaza City, the Holy Family Parish. And this place, has become a refuge for people amid the horrific genocide that's taking place in Gaza. And if you look at the picture of where the church was hit, it was right on the roof, right next to the cross. And 3 Christians were killed, about 10 others were injured. And this is another thing that got a lot of attention from Christians. And I've seen even Catholics, in the U.S. I'm a Catholic myself. Unfortunately, there's a lot of Catholics like influencers in the U.S. who are pro-Israel, even though we have no theological reason to support this modern state of Israel. But even many of them, including Michael Knowles, has come out against this strike. Israel's claiming it was an accident, but the church authorities, Cardinal Pizzaballa, who has a wonderful name, he's the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem. He's essentially the head Catholic cardinal in the Holy Land. He cast doubt on Israel's claim that this was an accident. And this isn't World War II. It's not like Israeli tanks are just, firing aimlessly in a certain direction. These are precision-guided munitions. They know exactly where they're firing. So this has really gotten the attention of people, again, that, normally don't either pay too much attention to what's happening in Gaza or people who are actually supportive of it. And I mean, I've been very surprised by some of the people that have come out strongly against this. And of course, and in the Latin Patriarchs, in Pizzaballa's statement, he's been very good on this. This is the third time he went to Gaza right after. It's the third time he's been there since October 2023. In his statement, he said, this is just, this is no worse than all the other tragedies happening in Gaza. I forget exactly his words, but they were very strong about all the slaughter that's happening in Gaza. And what you pulled up there is good because as I said, they're not buying this claim from Israel that this was an accident. And the Pillar, which is a Catholic news outlet, they cited sources within the Latin Patriarchate saying that they're considering the possibility that this was actually retaliation for the Christian leaders visiting Taipei. And because they put out another very strong statement blaming the Israeli government for emboldening the settlers, which you cannot argue against that at this point, considering the people that make up the current Israeli government. And it's clear that the Pope Leo is not really buying Israel's excuse, because he put out himself. He got some heat because he put out a statement that initially didn't name the IDF as the perpetrator of the attack, but then on Sunday, in one of his after one of his prayers, he called it an Israeli army attack, and very strongly called for a ceasefire. So people are not buying this excuse that it was an accident. And Israel has attacked all the Christian sites in Gaza. There's an Orthodox church that they bombed in October 2023, killing 18 people, including relatives of Justin Amash, the former U.S. representative. They destroyed the Holy Rosary School, which was a big Catholic school in Gaza. They bombed the Al Ali Baptist Hospital, which is run by the Anglican Church in the Middle East. They bombed it several times. So this is not just a one-off. No. And it seems like it's gotten a lot of attention.
As it should. And the idea that Israel thinks that they can say that this was an accident. I mean, it's so annoying. It's so frustrating. I mean, how many times do they think that that's like an acceptable response to this stuff? Like, we're all fully aware that this stuff is not an accident. I mean, it's constant, Dave. And I think that that's how they've been so successful in years past at avoiding accountability, because they they did control the narrative really in years past. And I think that, and you and I may have spoken about this before, with the invention of and the use of social media, as much of a cesspool as it can be, it has afforded us one very important thing, which I've spoken very strongly about, that I genuinely think that the use of social media throughout the course of this genocide has been unbelievably beneficial, because where mainstream media obviously fails us, there are very brave people on the ground in Gaza who are able to live stream their own genocide to us daily. And that has really lifted the veil. I think prior to that, in any other conflict in the history of this, they've been able to very effectively silence critics and control the narrative, make sure that they have control over what's written and printed and spoken about and all of that stuff. And that's really just not the case anymore. And you mentioned, I love that you mentioned Michael Knowles, because I actually I don't know if I want to play the whole video, because I don't want to waste, it's like 5 minutes, and I really don't want to listen to Michael Knowles for 5 minutes. But what I thought was interesting, and I'm not familiar with this person, Mel. I have no idea who she is, but I thought that, and especially
she's cool. I've done the show a few times.
All right, cool. I'll follow her. Or I may already be following her. I'm not sure. But in his video, she tweeted it out, and he said, quote, "You're losing me when you strike churches, the only church in Gaza, even if accidentally, but especially if not accidentally, you're losing me," end quote. And she points out that this is where they start to lose you. Like, it's just so absurd. But the idea that you're right, even Michael Knowles and Mike Huckabee are now speaking out against it, it really is telling. That's very telling, I think.
Yeah, and I think another thing that seems to have opened some eyes is the response by certain Israel supporters, especially in the U.S. This guy Joel Berry, he works for the Babylon
I have
Bee.
That too. Yeah,
he essentially justified the attack, saying, "Oh, all the Catholics in Gaza are Hamas supporters," and saying that they're not true Christians. I mean, it blew me away. I mean, I've seen him. He's put out horrific things before, but
yeah,
he's justifying the bombing of a Catholic church that killed 3 people. And again, it just blew me away. And the response to this, again, from people that I just would never expect to be critical of Israel. I just think it's kind of opening eyes, because as Mel said, it's like, this is the thing that makes you wake up. Well, maybe for some people, this is what it takes, because the way Joel here is talking about the Catholics in Gaza is the way they all talk about all the children in Gaza, all the civilians in Gaza. They mark them for death when they say, "Oh, they're all Hamas supporters, so you might as well," there's no innocent civilians. We hear this rhetoric all the time. And maybe it'll open more eyes when they hear this stuff. It might seem familiar, when they hear there's all these claims to justify the Israeli military slaughtering civilians, over 100 a day now, every single day.
Yeah.
But yeah, this really just blew. I mean, it just blew me away. What he's saying here.
The idea that, first of all, that he could even possibly know that there are only about 200 professed Catholics and they all support Hamas. He's very sure of himself. They all support him. First of all, even if they do, so what? So what if they support Hamas? They have every right to support Hamas. Again, they are living in an occupied territory. They are, they have.
And they've been attacked before by the IDF. I should have mentioned back in December 2023.
I have that.
Yeah, the church, the compound was under Israeli siege, and Israeli snipers killed 2 women. Snipers shot 2 women and killed them, and injured 7 people who tried to help them. Yeah. That's Lebanon. That's another church they bombed.
Oh, no, wrong slide.
Yeah. So, but again, yes, just to see him say that. And I know a guy named Khalil Seg, who's a Palestinian Christian from Gaza, who has lost family in the ongoing genocide, his father and his sister. And he's from Gaza. He knows people sheltering in the church. One of the women who was killed, the elderly woman who was 84 years old, who was killed by the bombing, is a relative of his. And he says it's just this idea that they support Hamas just isn't right. Like they don't politically support Hamas, the Catholics in Gaza. It's just not true. And maybe, as you said, would they support people fighting against, the IDF that's currently attacking them? I mean, that's kind of a different thing than what Joel Berry is saying there. But again, it's just really despicable. And this really, because, Berry is a certain kind of Christian Zionist. And this is like the Mike Huckabee type. Now, that's another reason why I was surprised by Mike Huckabee going to Taipei. And they do believe that God gave this piece of land to the modern state of Israel. And I think that view, a lot of people realized how absurd it was when they saw Tucker Carlson interview Ted Cruz. Because Ted Cruz said, what the Bible says, what I learned in Sunday school, those who bless Israel will be blessed. And Tucker was like, you mean the country that's run by Bibi Netanyahu? Yeah. Because it is absurd to have that interpretation. And so there's a lot of Christians, Protestants. Again, I'm a Catholic. I'm recently returned to the church, so I'm like, pretty into it these days, but into theology and stuff. And there's a lot of Christians in the U.S. who are Protestants, and even Catholics who aren't ideologically Zionists or don't follow that theology, but it's kind of baked into their Christianity, where they just kind of see, Israel, like they look at the Bible, Israel, they see Israel on a map. I guess we got to support them. And I think for a lot of those people, the veil's kind of being lifted by a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And the interview with Ted Cruz, I think I may have covered it here on Jimmy's show. The idea that he so brazenly said that when he got elected, his first order of business was to protect the state of Israel blew my mind. That he thought that was a good answer blew my mind. And then he asked
Tucker at one point, why are you so obsessed with Israel?
Right? And Tucker's like, wait a minute, my guy. You're the one that just said that your whole philosophy, your whole point in life as an elected representative is to protect and support the state of Israel. Who's the one that's obsessed? So yeah, that was a very revealing interview, I think, for sure. And I think that's really kind of given people a glimpse into how most elected officials see Israel. We've seen the way that they have completely compromised and have paid off and bought a vast majority of people in elected positions in Congress. So I think I think it's good. Again, I don't know. I hate to be Debbie Downer. I don't know if it's going to be enough to save Palestine. It doesn't look like it's going to be. It's not looking great at any rate. As you said, they're slaughtering at least 100 people a day at this point. And I do think that if we have a little sliver of hope, it is the fact that narrative is failing. And I think that we might be past the point of no return for Zionism. And that's a little bit of something to keep some hope on. Maybe I'm trying to find hope, guys. I really am. The Gaza stuff's a lot for me. And as I mentioned when I had you on my show recently, I think about you often, and I don't mean that in like a weird, creepy way. But I know that you follow this super closely, and I can't, it's too much to see the constant barrage of images, especially of the kids. And so I hope that you're able to step away from it at some point and cleanse your brain, because it's a lot. It is definitely a lot to take in.
Hey, what if your coffee didn't just wake you up but actually made you feel sharp, focused, and ready for the day? That's the difference with 1775's Pea Berry coffee. These beans are rare, less than 5% of all coffee grown. They're denser, naturally higher in caffeine, and packed with antioxidants. That means more mental clarity, better energy, and zero crash. Each bean grows so low, high in the Bolivian mountains, and it's hand-picked at peak ripeness. The result? A smoother, more concentrated flavor that kickstarts your metabolism without the acidity or jitters. How can they pull that off? You're still getting 1775's organic, small batch, small farm, single origin quality, just with the bean that goes above and beyond. So go to 1775coffee.com/door to save 15% off your order of 1775 coffee. It's coffee that actually earns its place in your morning. Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Oxnard, California, Rutherford, New Jersey, New York, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.